Join us is someone who knows exactly how the Ukrainian voice sounds in Washington. Andriy Dobriansky, Director of Communication at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. We'll talk about what America hears about Ukraine and what's going on in global politics. Andriy, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Right now, there is talk of a potential agreement between Ukraine and the US on rare earths, minerals. Many Ukrainians are cautioning, they're afraid this could turn into another trap like the Budapest Memorandum, which Washington doesn't like to mention much these days. Now we heard, Ukraine, you're spending a lot. Give us your resources. So do you think this could be a kind of Budapest Memorandum version 2.0, just warped in the different paper?
Well, it depends what happens at the end. We know that this was an idea that was proposed months ago. We know that Lindsey Graham had spoken about rare earth minerals last summer with the Ukrainian administration, and that as soon as President Trump was elected, this was an idea that was proposed to him to have some kind of agreement between the two countries. Now, both the latest version of this proposal as well as the first proposal showed to Ukraine are outrageous documents that one would never sign. And that's why Ukraine came together with the United States. I believe it was the head of the presidential administration, Andriy Dobriansky, who came to the United States. And for a week, they negotiated a 50-50 agreement for all these rare earth minerals, the development of a common fund for both countries. This was, in terms of the White House and Ukraine, the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, what happened, and I keep having to remind Republican voices in the United States when I'm on television with them, is that the agreement was ready to be signed. The pens were ready, the desks were ready, but the president of Ukraine was asked to leave the White House. And that's why we don't have a signed agreement. It's because the United States asked them to leave the White House and not sign the agreement. After that incident in February, we did not hear much about the rare earth agreement until just recently. A new draft agreement was issued, which was almost entirely like the initial agreement before the negotiations. And no country would sign an agreement without negotiations. It's not clear why the United States thought they could simply offer the same terms that they did at the beginning before the negotiations. Why? And again, no country would agree to this. And as President Zelensky underscored for the entire world audience, what Ukraine has received has not been a loan from the United States. Ukraine has received discarded munitions that were past the point of expiration, that the United States had to pay to dispose of, if not giving them to Ukraine. So the United States actually was saving money by giving arms to Ukraine. 80% of the money appropriated for Ukraine remained in the United States as salaries to United States workers. I'm not sure what exactly the United States thinks it can get back from Ukraine if the 80% of the money never left the United States.
Mm-hmm. So in one word, is this deal an opportunity for Ukraine or the beginning of a bad ending?
It depends. I know you want one word. It depends on what the finished agreement is. And as we know in the negotiations that happened that were supposed to be signed in February, this was a framework agreement to eventually be put in place an agreement that is agreed to by the Verkhovna Rada. So even if Ukraine were to sign what is on the table right now, it still requires the Verkhovna Rada to sign on to it. And I don't think the Verkhovna Rada would ever sign on to the agreement that is on the table right now.
Mm-hmm. Let me put it this way. While Europe is building a coalition of the willing to support Ukraine, President Trump seems to be building a coalition of willing dictators. He calls Kim Jong-un a smart guy and talks about meeting him again. Now that Trump is back in the White House, Is the US still leading the free world, or are we watching the first steps toward American-style dictatorship?
There's definitely signs of a vertical power integration, much like what happened in Hungary, very much like what happened in Russia after the rise of both Orban and Putin, except that in the United States it's happening very much quicker. And for that reason, it's not certain whether that he can maintain his control because it's happening so quickly. There is the old adage that if you boil a frog slowly, the frog never knows that it's being cooked. And that is what happened in the countries that I just mentioned. Slowly over time, rights were taken away, but not quick enough that people revolted against them. Things are happening much quicker in the United States, and it's going to be interesting to see what the end result is, whether there'll be a sharp political backlash to that or not. And that's one of the reasons that President Trump is working so quickly. As to whether the American country remains a part of the democratic world, if there is no change politically, if there is no backlash and stopping of President Trump, I believe that President Trump would love to begin the process of removing the United States from NATO this year. We see that in his antagonization of different countries, including Denmark, Canada, other NATO alliance members. And then, crucially, the United States is moving away from being the Supreme Allied Commander. So 5 Supreme Allied Commanders have chaired the Transatlantic Alliance. They have all been American. And we are looking now to the first non-American being the Supreme Allied Commander, a sign that the United States does not want to be involved in the European territory as a whole, and really pulling back its resources, as we've seen from the destruction of USAID and even Voice of America around the world.
Okay, President Trump keeps repeating one of Putin's key talking points, that the war started because Ukraine wants to join NATO. But for Ukraine, this is a dangerous narrative. The war began because of Putin's miscalculation, not because NATO posed any real threats. Finland's recent NATO membership proved that. So why is President Trump haunting Kremlin propaganda?
This is not an ideological statement from President Trump. He simply is given information and he decides what best reaction his fans on X or on Facebook or any other social media platform that he's on. He is the final arbiter of what he feels his followers react to most positively. And so when he picked that particular narrative of NATO, we know that there has been a strain of anti-NATO followers of President Trump for some time. And he simply picked that topic. You haven't seen that repeated throughout his statements as a whole. So it seems that this was just something that he picked up on after 1 or 2 meetings, that he might be able to use that for his own benefit. But I don't see it. I don't hear that coming out of a lot of other voices in the administration. And so we'll see if that's something that he keeps on repeating, or maybe it was just a very short-term topic of his.
What do you think has changed in the relationship between Trump and Putin? Trump now says he's ready to impose tariff on Russian oil. That's a big shift from his earlier tone when he said he understands Putin's feelings. Even the Finnish president hinted at rising tension between them after meeting Trump. Is there a real crack forming in the relationship?
I don't think so, because I haven't heard that comment directly from President Trump. He had a phone call with one reporter on Saturday evening here in the United States. The recording wasn't released, the transcript was released, and then the reporter explained the next day what was the conversation was, and this is the conversation in which he said that he was upset at President Putin, that he's ready to escalate tariffs. The very next day, however, he was again talking about how he was not happy with President Zelensky for not signing the minerals agreement. So whenever we hear him speak, he's still saying he's still being more harsh with Ukraine than he is with Russia. We haven't, other than that one time one time that he called a reporter to talk about him being angry, we haven't seen him do anything, and that's really the problem here. Is in this world where we have carrots and sticks. Ukraine has been getting all the sticks to beat, taking away the military supplies, taking away the military intelligence. Those are the sticks used against Ukraine. Russia seems to get only carrots. Russia does not get any sticks, any punishment for rejecting the ceasefire that Ukraine agreed to, rejecting this temporary ceasefire by attacking more locations in Ukraine, and there is no punishment. So until we see any actual punishment being given to Russia, like the sanctions, like any number of actions, then we'll know that President Trump has changed his mind. But at this point, we may have that one conversation, but other than that, it's still being much harsher against Ukraine than he is against Russia.
So to sum it up, would you say Trump is leading America in the right direction? And is this really what ordinary Americans wanted when they voted for him, for Trump?
I think in general, the right track, wrong track shows that Americans are tiring of the president's actions. The one area that he still has a popularity in is his rhetoric about immigration in the United States, although we are just approaching the time where he will begin deporting almost 1 million people within the next month, and that includes 250,000 Ukrainians who have come to the United States since 2022. We will see what the reaction is to the 500,000 or so Cubans and Venezuelans that have been ordered to leave the country within 30 days. We saw this horrible action about innocent men being sent to El Salvador. So I'm mentioning all of these immigration issues because this is the topic that he remains popular in. All the other metrics, economics, whatever metrics you use for presidency, all of those, he's below 50% popularity. He's only above popularity in immigration. And now we have these very unpleasant news stories that will come out about immigration. And so he will soon be even more unpopular. We anticipate that by the middle of summer, his popularity might be around 30% in the United States, at which point it then becomes a question whether Congress still supports his initiatives, whether they start not just speaking out about the way Ukraine has been treated, but even passing legislation to protect Ukraine. There are two pieces of legislation that were just introduced by a Republican. One is to protect the Ukrainians who have been given either temporary asylum or humanitarian parole into the United States, and also a bipartisan resolution, again sponsored by a Republican, to declare that any territory that is claimed by Russia is actually that the United States will never recognize that territory.
Mm-hmm. Andriy, in your view, do Americans still support Ukraine?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Poll after poll, absolutely, you'll see the support. But you'll see that just from driving around the country. I just drove the extent of New York State for a conference this past weekend. Ukrainian flags all along highways and people's individual homes. We just saw that in declarations made on the 3rd anniversary of the war on February 24th. You had Republican governors, mayors, state legislatures, all issuing proclamations in support of Ukraine. The support for Ukraine is very active on the local level. So no matter what President Trump says or some of his supporters in Washington, throughout the country, the American people are still behind Ukraine.
Thank you, Andriy, for this interview. Andriy Dobriansky, Director of Communication at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Thank you, Andriy.
Thank you.